I've always been doubted my entire career.
It's not about stats at this point in my career. At this point in my career, I want to win, and that's what's most important.
I'm not driven off attention, media, awards. I just like doing things just because it's the right thing to do.
Running back is one of the most high-profile positions in the NFL. Broken tackles, angry runs, and open field jukes always capture fans' attentions. But for the guys who don't produce these kind of highlights, well, they can get looked right past.
Oh, it's true.
It's damn true.
Consistent production and solid fundamentals might get a mention here or there, but they won't force an analyst to give a hot take, and they won't cause anyone to yell at each other on national TV. And for this reason, these great backs can get brushed right past and overlooked. But that's exactly why I'm making this series, to appreciate star players who didn't get the shine they rightly deserved.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
Welcome back to Unlikely Success. Like, comment, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today, we're going to talk about 3 overlooked stars who played running back in the NFL. Let's start with the most recent and work our way backwards. Second City Solid, Matt Forte. Matt Forte is a Chicago Bears legend, and rightfully so, but he played for the team during a strange time period. The franchise is known for having great defenses and playing hard-nosed football, and the quiet running back who starts our list could not have fit in any better with this identity. Matt Forte should be remembered for being a versatile and productive player who quietly went about his business and valued his faith deeply. But before we get too far into the rabbit hole, let's start with where his NFL career actually began. Matt Forte was selected in the second round out of Tulane University in 2008. Not exactly a college powerhouse known for sending players to the NFL, but a perfect football school for the type of player the Bears had just chosen. And it did not take long for Forte to make his mark in Chicago. He immediately earned the starting role, and in no way did he look like a rookie when he ran for over 1,200 yards and added 63 catches for nearly 500 yards more. He also added 12 combined touchdowns and showed more than a glimpse of what his time with the franchise was going to be like. In an era where most backs were either a power runner or a receiver, and more teams featured combined backfields, Forte was a true 3-down back, and this fact made him one of the most versatile weapons in the league. He could run between the tackles, break off long runs, serve as a reliable receiving option, and hold his own when staying in to help with pass protection. In fact, his receiving skills were so good that he consistently ranked among the top running backs in receptions, and this could easily be attributed to the ability to run receiver-like routes out of the backfield. After all, this is a guy that had over 550 receptions in his career. During his 8 seasons with the Chicago Bears, Forte quietly built one of the most well-rounded resumes in the league. He never really drew the star attention from national media like an Adrian Peterson or Marshawn Lynch, but year after year, Forte was putting in work and producing. Not only steady numbers, but stellar stats. He anchored the Chicago Bears offense at running back, and the team knew they could rely on him. And rely on him, they did. Forte averaged nearly 1,600 combined rushing and receiving yards per season over his time with the Bears. Let me say that one more time. Matt Forte averaged almost 1,600 all-purpose yards over an 8-year stretch. If that's not consistency, I don't know what is. Unfortunately for him though, the Chicago records were not as consistent as he was. Sure, they were competitive during the Lovie Smith years of his career, but then things took a turn as they inexplicably fired their head coach after a 10-6 record. Who does that? After this, they would have a pair of coaches who vastly underperformed, Mark Trestman and John Fox. I don't want to spoil it for you in case you revisit the 2013 to 2017 Bears, but let's just say that neither of these coaches worked out. And if you do go back, here's a quick hint for you. There were no winning seasons over that 4-year stretch.
This guy knows what I'm talking about.
It was a dark period for Chicago Bears fans, and my apologies for bringing it up, but it's part of Forte's story, and it has to be included. The coaching staff was inconsistent, but Matt continued to be a steady presence that kept the chains moving. He even set a single-season record in 2014 for receptions by a running back, with 102, and he had over 1,800 all-purpose yards in the process, but it was lost on a team that went 5-11. If they had gone 11-5, more people would have noticed, right? Maybe I'm the only one who thinks more wins equals more attention. Let me know what you think in the comments. Despite his consistent production, Matt Forte was never really fully embraced by the national media, or even given the same recognition as some of his peers. It wasn't because of his lack of talent. It may have been because of his demeanor, but I think it was the fact that the Bears regressed over the course of his time with the team. I mean, winners get more recognition, and after 2012, the Bears were not winning very often. For his part though, Forte was not one to seek attention or make bold statements. He was content to let his play speak for itself, and this was definitely a recipe for being overlooked. His calm, almost understated presence might have contributed to this lack of recognition, but it also made him a respected figure in locker rooms and amongst the coaches he played for. Who wouldn't want a guy around who does his job incredibly well and doesn't bring drama or added attention in negative ways? I mean, sign me up to play with that guy, right? Forte was often compared to other multi-purpose backs like LaDainian Tomlinson or Marshall Faulk, but without winning records or high-profile games with big stakes for Matt, the comparisons would only draw attention to the failures of his franchise, instead of highlighting his versatility. While Faulk and Tomlinson played big portions of their careers for perennial Super Bowl contenders, Forte was stuck on a Bears team that went the wrong direction after early success during his time there.
What happened? Something must have happened.
It's not you, it's me.
In 2016, Forte signed with the New York Jets. Unfortunately, by this time, he was a fading star who could not provide the same impact that he did in his early days. After all, the NFL is a young man's game, and this has been proven to be the truest at running back of all the positions. By the time he retired in 2018, Forte had compiled over 9,700 rushing yards and more than 4,600 receiving yards, making him one of the most productive dual-threat running backs in NFL history. He never landed on an All-Pro team, made 2 Pro Bowls, and doesn't have any season awards to speak of, but he left a legacy of consistency. I wonder if the Bears had been a franchise making the playoffs year in and year out during his time, would Forte have made more Pro Bowls and All-Pro teams? I could be off base here, but he missed the Pro Bowl in 3 years, one of which he had over 1,800 scrimmage yards, and the other 2 over 1,600. What do you think?
Why is that you're better at the end of a game than at the beginning of a game?
Well, I mean, football is tough, and it's a 4-quarter game, and when you start out the game, emotions are high, everybody's got high energy and everything, and it's about making it all the way in the 3rd, 4th quarter where you can wear defense down. As a running back, that's what you really want to do. When you're in the 1st, 2nd quarter, it's really up to the offensive line to, kind of establish that up front, and then, running tough so that you can establish that run game and then open it up in the pass. And then towards the end of the game, you might be up and you might have to run out the clock or keep the ball or keep their offense off the field. So that comes where you try to wear them down, and then you get big runs later, because you might be running 2-3 yards a pop, and then you break a 60-yard run or 40-yard run, then your average goes to 5-6 yards a carry, and it looks like you had 6 yards every carry the whole game.
St. Louis strong, Steven Jackson. The second name on this list is definitely the most overlooked. He is the all-time leading rusher for a franchise known for having standouts at the position, but all of it was squandered on a team that couldn't get out of its own way. Steven Jackson should be recognized as one of the best running backs of all time, but instead, he is consistently forgotten due to the failures of the St. Louis Rams. In order to truly understand why this is the case, let's go back and start from the beginning of his NFL career. In 2004, the St. Louis Rams were fresh off the glory days of the greatest show on turf. And in my opinion, this is the greatest offense the NFL has ever seen. It was led by Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, and Torrey Holt. If you dropped them into the current NFL, it would be damn near unstoppable. But by the time they drafted Steven Jackson 24th overall in the 1st round, the wheels were falling off. Faulk was aging, Warner was gone, and the team's Super Bowl window was being slammed shut. Jackson was brought in as the future of the franchise, and early on, he gave us Rams fans hope. By his 2nd season, Jackson had taken over the starting role from Marshall Faulk. He quickly showed flashes of greatness, but they were very different from his predecessor.
What's that supposed to mean?
It's a compliment if you think about it.
His size, speed, and power were what separated him, not the futuristic style of a back like Faulk. In 2006, Jackson would break out, rushing for over 1,500 yards and adding another 800 receiving yards, with 16 combined touchdowns. His ability to catch the ball out of the backfield made him a clear dual threat, even if it was far different from Faulk. it was still effective. The problem was, he was a bright spot on a team that was otherwise beginning its descent into NFL purgatory. The team couldn't capitalize on Jackson's brilliance in 2006, as they'd go 8-8 and miss the playoffs. And sadly, that was as good as it ever got during the star running back's tenure with the team. From 2007 to 2012, Jackson's prime years, the Rams were simply awful. And I do mean awful. During the 6-year span, they failed to win more than 7 games in any season. In fact, they went 15-65 during a particularly brutal 4-year stretch between 2007 and 2011. As a fan of the team, I can confirm these were dark years. Yet during these losing seasons, Steven Jackson continued to carry the team on his back, putting up monster numbers year after year. Between 2005 and 2012, Jackson rushed for over 1,000 yards in 8 consecutive seasons, one of the longest stretches in NFL history. To put this in perspective, the only 2 running backs with longer stretches were Emmitt Smith and Curtis Martin, and the only others who tied it were Thurman Thomas and LaDainian Tomlinson. All of these guys have received a gold jacket, and in my opinion, Jackson should get one too. But because the Rams were constantly losing, Jackson's individual accomplishments never received the recognition they deserved. I mean, if a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear it? The problem was never Jackson, it was the team. The Rams cycled through quarterbacks, head coaches, and offensive coordinators, and none of it worked. Jackson was grinding it out in relative anonymity and suffering through loss after loss. It was as if the football world forgot about him, and worse still, they took his greatness for granted. But Rams fans did not. We appreciate him as a bright spot in what was a very bleak period for the team. Now, let's talk about something very near and dear to my heart. Steven Jackson's legacy and whether he deserves a spot in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Statistically, Jackson's career puts him in. I mean, the guy finished his career with 11,438 rushing yards, which ranks 18th all time. That's more than Hall of Famers like O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell, and even Marshall Faulk. Jackson's versatility also puts him in rare company. He finished with nearly 80 combined career touchdowns and over 3,600 receiving yards, showcasing his ability to be both a threat as a rusher and a receiver. But if we're being honest, Jackson's candidacy for the Hall of Fame is going to be a tough sell. And it's not because of what he did on the field. It's because of what the Rams didn't do off the field. They didn't build a team that could win. And as unfair as it may be, Hall of Fame voters often look for team success. The Rams' failure to win big games during Jackson's career, combined with the lack of postseason moments, cast a shadow over his greatness. Unlike other legendary running backs, Jackson never had the chance to shine on the playoff stage. He doesn't have a signature postseason game, or even highlight reel moments that solidify his place in the NFL history books. But does that mean he wasn't great? Absolutely not. When we talk about the best running backs of the 2000s and early 2010s, names like Tomlinson, Peterson, and Gore come up, and rightfully so. They were all amazing talents, but Jackson belongs in that conversation also. He was the kind of back who could do it all. Run through defenders, break off big plays, and catch passes out of the backfield. But the biggest difference between Jackson and his contemporaries was the team around him. Had he played for a more competitive franchise, I believe he would be a lock for the Hall of Fame. But sometimes that's not the way the NFL works out. Some players get lost in the shuffle of rebuilding franchises that never seem to figure it out. And that's what happened to Steven Jackson. But you tell me, am I overstating his case for the Hall of Fame?
All right, so first of all, do you root for the Rams? Just to start there.
I do, but I it's bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
It's like you give them almost a decade, 9 years. You give them everything you have. Never better than 8-8.
Right.
9 seasons. I had 6 coaches.
Right.
Counting interim coaches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So all I know is turnover.
Yeah.
And now to see the success of this group.
Before you is the greatest show on turf.
Yeah.
After you is Sean McVay and this offensive explosion.
Right.
In between.
Yeah, I'm just the meat.
Warrick's way. Overcoming adversity and becoming a star. Warrick Dunn's path to the NFL was littered with tragedy and adversity. Raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Dunn was one of 6 children raised by a single mother, Betty Smothers, a Baton Rouge police officer. Tragedy struck the family when he was just 18 years old. His mother tragically passed as an armed robbery occurred while she was working her second job as a security guard. The devastating loss of his mother would force Dunn to become the head of his household and caretaker for his siblings. He used this tragedy as fuel though, and he was determined to make his mother proud by pursuing his dream of playing in the NFL. and he would do just that. Starring at Florida State University under legendary coach Bobby Bowden, Dunn became a household name, racking up over 3,900 rushing yards in his college career and winning a national championship with the Seminoles. His blend of speed, elusiveness, and toughness made him one of the best running backs in college football. But at just 5'9" and 180 pounds, it was his size that some scouts saw as a potential flaw. After all, running back is a position that takes a heavy dose of punishment, and being undersized can be difficult for some, but not for Warrick. After being selected 12th overall in the 1997 draft by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he was about to show the league what he could do. The Bucs had been a struggling franchise, but their fortunes were about to change, in part due to their new addition at running back. In his rookie season, Dunn racked up over 1,400 yards and was named Offensive Rookie of the Year. His combination of quickness and vision allowed him to slice through defenses. Even though he was often one of the smallest players on the field, his toughness could never be questioned. However, despite his individual success, he was often overlooked, as there were several other star running backs with more established names. You see, Dunn wasn't the kind of player who made the highlight reel every week, but he was extremely consistent. He wasn't flashy, but he was dependable, a quality that rarely grabs headlines, but is invaluable in the NFL. I would even go so far as to say it's more valuable to have a reliable player who consistently delivers very good performances, rather than a boom or bust player where you suffer the highs and lows of inconsistency. Dunn's years in Tampa saw the team go from perennial cellar dwellers to legitimate contenders. Warrick in the backfield, along with a personal favorite of mine, Mike Alstott, paired nicely with the stingy defense led by Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp. And this would be the recipe for Bucs success, as they made the playoffs in 4 of Dunn's 5 seasons with the club. The team's overall success was great, but Dunn and the Tampa offense played the part of backup singers to the star-studded defense when it came to media attention. And for good reason. The late 90s and early 2000s Buccaneer defenses were some of the best ever. In 2002, Dunn made the decision to sign with the Atlanta Falcons. The move turned out to be beneficial for both parties. In Atlanta, Dunn would go on to post some of the best numbers of his career, including 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons from 2004 to 2006. The same year Dunn joined the Falcons, though, Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, in what could only be a bittersweet moment for Dunn, as the team he helped build finally reached the mountaintop after he left.
Well, that was awkward. Yes, it was.
Even though he wasn't there to lift the Lombardi trophy, his impact on the franchise was undeniable. It's unfortunate that while Warrick Dunn played in an era where running backs were the superstars, he was never the superstar of the franchises he played for. In Tampa, it was the defense, and in Atlanta, it was Michael Vick. Dunn would quietly go about his business, racking up yards and helping carry offenses that needed him. He finished his career with over 10,000 rushing yards and more than 4,300 receiving yards, and he remains one of just a handful of running backs in NFL history to surpass both 10,000 rushing yards and 500 receptions. Yet even with these numbers, he is consistently overshadowed by running backs who served as their team's primary star. He wasn't one to dance in the end zone or make salacious headlines off the field. Instead, he let his performance and work ethic speak for him, and he just so happened to land on franchises with higher profile stars. But if there is one thing that sets Warrick Dunn apart from most athletes, it's his commitment to giving back to his communities. Inspired by the memory of his mother, Dunn started Warrick Dunn Charities and launched the Homes for the Holidays program, which provides down payment assistance and home furnishings to single-parent families in need. To date, Dunn has helped over 200 families become homeowners. His work off the field has touched the lives of so many people, and for many, this is his true legacy, not his solid NFL career. He doesn't have gaudy numbers compared to his contemporaries, but he does have pretty good ones. Over his 12-year career, he had 5 1,000 rushing yard seasons, and he made 3 Pro Bowls. These are not necessarily Hall of Fame numbers, but they belong in the Hall of Very Good. His dual threat ability puts him in the same conversation as some of the greats of his time, and while it's a stretch to call him a Hall of Famer, it cannot be denied that he was a high-quality player. What do you think of Warrick Dunn's career? If he had won the Super Bowl in Tampa, is he remembered differently? Or was he always destined to be seen as a very good player and not a great one?
Warrick Dunn is a very sweet but quiet man.
Yeah, very.
And he was like, you the party guy? I said, yeah. So you going to the Bucs, huh? He was like, yes. I grew up in Tampa. He was like, nice. I said, if you want to like if you want me to introduce you to any people in Tampa, like any of my friends, like party and stuff, and he looked at me, he goes, nah.
Running backs are regularly chewed up and spit out in the NFL. Few get the chance to have longevity. Fewer still have 5 or more productive seasons. While every name on this list was a star to their team's fan base, my stance is they should have been stars to the entire NFL fan base. Timing and surroundings can be everything in the NFL, and these 3 players did not land in the right spots, surrounded by the right guys. If they had, this video may have been very different. I doubt it though, as these running backs were not the types to seek out the spotlight. Sometimes the best players are the ones who simply show up, do their job, and let their performance speak for them. This has been the Unlikely Success.
The article came out and we're not mentioned.
What?
It's a bullshit piece on the usual assholes. He compares them to philosophers.